In 1979, a man dunked so hard he exploded the backboard. Glass rained onto the court. Players scrambled for cover. The NBA had never seen anything like it. 3 weeks later, he did it again. The league was forced to completely redesign their equipment. And this wasn't even the most interesting thing about Darryl Dawkins. He was the first player ever drafted straight from high school to the NBA. He claimed to be from an alien planet called Lovetron. He gave his dunks names so long they sounded like poetry. And the story of how a kid from poverty in Orlando became basketball's most explosive showman is wilder than you might expect. But to understand Darryl Dawkins, you have to start at the beginning. Darryl Ricardo Dawkins was born on January 11th, 1957, the second of 7 children in a family that knew poverty intimately. His father left when Darryl was still a baby, leaving his mother to raise the children largely alone. But the person who truly shaped young Darryl was his grandmother, Amanda Celestine Jones. Grandma Jones worked 2 jobs just to keep the family fed. She taught Darryl to cook, clean and sew by the time he was 9 years old. Not because she wanted him to be domestic, but because she wanted him to survive. In that household, there was a simple rule that would stay with Dawkins forever. If you didn't work, you didn't eat. So young Darryl worked. He picked fruit in the Florida groves. He raised chickens. He painted houses. Whatever it took to contribute. But even as a child, it was obvious that Darryl Dawkins was different. By his early teens, he was already approaching 6 feet tall with shoulders that seemed to belong to a grown man. By the time he reached Maynard Evans High School, he had become something coaches whispered about across the state of Florida. His high school coach Fred Pennington would later be asked about Dawkins after his death. Pennington was 88 years old at that point, and he did not hesitate with his assessment. The best high school basketball player who ever lived. That was not hyperbole. As a senior, Dawkins averaged 32 points and 21 rebounds per game while leading the Trojans to the Florida Class 5 state championship. He was 6'10", with a 7'3" wingspan, possessing the body of an NBA veteran while still taking classes with teenagers. Kentucky wanted him badly, so did Florida State and Kansas. Recruiters descended on Orlando, promising everything they could offer. For a while, it looked like Darryl Dawkins would follow the traditional path. He was leaning toward Kentucky, ready to play college basketball like everyone expected. Then came the phone call that changed everything. 3 days before the 1975 NBA draft, the Philadelphia 76ers reached out. They wanted to know if Darryl Dawkins would consider skipping college entirely and going straight to the pros. For Dawkins, the decision came down to one thing: his grandmother. He later explained it simply. He had seen his grandmother working 2 jobs just to make ends meet. She gave him her last $10 so he could buy some sneakers. He knew then that he had to do it. On May 29, 1975, the Philadelphia 76ers selected Darryl Dawkins with the 5th overall pick in the NBA draft. He was 18 years old. He had never played a single minute of college basketball, and he had just become the first player in history to be drafted directly from high school into the NBA. Bill Willoughby would be selected later that same day, but Dawkins went first. The door was open, and basketball would never be the same. The 76ers signed Dawkins to a 7-year, $1 million contract. It was life-changing money for a kid from poverty in Orlando, but money could not prepare him for what he was about to face. Imagine being 18 years old, straight out of high school, and suddenly sharing a locker room with NBA veterans, men in their late 20s and 30s who had been playing professional basketball longer than you had been alive. Men who did not appreciate some teenager threatening to take their minutes and their money. Dawkins' first coach in Philadelphia was Gene Shue, and Shue reportedly did not trust him. The rookie averaged just 4.5 minutes per game as an 18-year-old, scoring 2.4 points, while veteran stars like George McGinnis and Lloyd Free commanded the spotlight. There are stories from that first season that capture just how unprepared Dawkins was. He was so naive, so overwhelmed, that he would sometimes sit on the bench eating chocolate bars while the game continued around him. The NBA was a different world, and this was back when 18 was really 18. No YouTube to study, no internet to research opponents, just a teenager trying to figure out a man's game in real time. But even then, the potential was undeniable. Philadelphia scout Jack McMahon had watched Dawkins play in Orlando before the draft, and he could not believe what he was seeing. McMahon said there was no way this kid could be in high school. He had to be 25 years old, the same body he has now. The physical tools were already there. The basketball IQ and the maturity would take time. And time was something the NBA did not always give young players. There were moments of brilliance that hinted at what was coming. Dawkins would occasionally unleash a dunk so ferocious that opponents simply stepped aside. His defensive presence altered shots even when he was out of position. The raw talent was obvious to anyone watching. There were also moments of frustration. Dawkins committed fouls at an alarming rate, lacking the discipline to stay on the court during crucial stretches. He struggled with the mental aspects of professional basketball, the film study and defensive rotations that separated good players from great ones. The veterans did not make it easy. This was an era when rookies were expected to carry bags and stay quiet. Dawkins was neither quiet nor humble. His natural exuberance rubbed some teammates the wrong way. He was learning, sometimes painfully, that talent alone was not enough. Everything changed in November 1977 when Billy Cunningham replaced Gene Shue as head coach. Cunningham was demanding. He pushed Dawkins harder than anyone ever had. There are reports that when Cunningham first required Dawkins to run conditioning, the big man clocked a 15-minute mile. That was unacceptable. Cunningham also saw something special. He recognized that beneath the clowning and the chocolate bars was a player who could dominate at the highest level. Under Cunningham's guidance, Dawkins began to blossom. By his fourth season, Dawkins was averaging nearly 12 points and 8 rebounds while shooting 57.5% from the floor. That field goal percentage was second in the entire NBA. The teenager who could not get off the bench was becoming one of the most efficient scorers in basketball. And alongside Julius Erving, he was part of something spectacular. The Philadelphia 76ers of the late 1970s were one of the most exciting teams basketball had ever seen. Julius Erving, the legendary Dr.J, was the face of the franchise, and Darryl Dawkins was his perfect complement. Where Erving soared with grace and artistry, Dawkins brought thunder and intimidation. Together, they made Philadelphia must-see television. The Spectrum rocked on game nights as fans packed the arena to watch Dr.J soar and Chocolate Thunder rumble. It was beauty and power combined, artistry and destruction sharing the same court. The 1976 to 1977 season brought Dawkins his first taste of the NBA Finals. Philadelphia faced the Portland Trail Blazers in what should have been a showcase for the 76ers' superior talent. They took a 2-0 lead, seemingly in control. Then came Game 2's brawl. During a physical sequence, Dawkins threw a punch at Portland's Bob Gross. Morris Lucas charged from behind, and suddenly the game descended into chaos. Many historians believe that fight changed the entire series' momentum. Portland won 4 straight games to claim the championship. Dawkins' first finals appearance ended in bitter disappointment. The 1979 to 1980 season was Dawkins' peak as a player. He posted career highs across the board: 14.7 points per game, 8.7 rebounds, and 1.8 blocks. He was a dominant force on a team that seemed destined for a championship. The finals brought a matchup against the Los Angeles Lakers, and Dawkins delivered some of his finest performances. 25 points in Game 2, 26 points in Game 4. He was playing the best basketball of his life on the biggest stage. But Game 6 became one of the most famous in NBA history, and not because of anything Dawkins did. With Kareem Abdul-Jabbar injured, rookie Magic Johnson started at center. What followed was a performance that defied belief. Magic scored 42 points, grabbed 15 rebounds, and delivered 7 assists while playing all 5 positions. The Lakers won the championship, and Dawkins was left wondering what might have been. It was devastating. Dawkins had played some of the best basketball of his career, had risen to the moment when it mattered most, and still came up short. Not because he failed, but because Magic Johnson delivered one of the greatest performances in NBA Finals history. How do you process that? How do you move forward knowing you gave everything and it still was not enough? The 1982 Finals brought another meeting with Los Angeles, another heartbreaking loss. Dawkins fouled out of the decisive Game 6. 3 finals appearances, 3 defeats. The championship that seemed inevitable for such a talented team never materialized. Billy Cunningham later captured the essence of coaching Darryl Dawkins with a single story. During one practice, Cunningham criticized Dawkins for lack of effort. Dawkins hung his head, apologized, and promised to do better. Then, as Cunningham walked away, Dawkins stuck out his foot and tripped him. The big man laughed hysterically. "He would drive you crazy," Cunningham said, but then he was a little boy inside, a little boy. That duality defined Dawkins throughout his career. The fearsome dunker who could reduce opponents to rubble was also the joyful kid who never quite grew up. It frustrated coaches, it delighted fans, it made him unforgettable. We return now to that November night in 1979. The glass has settled, Bill Robinzine is being treated for his cuts. The fans in Kansas City are still trying to process what they just witnessed. Players from both teams had stood around in disbelief during the cleanup. Nobody knew the protocol for this situation, the Kings had to locate a replacement backboard, and the delay stretched on and on. In an era before social media, before instant replays could be shared around the world in seconds, word of what Dawkins had done spread through phone calls and word of mouth. Did you hear what happened in Kansas City? That Dawkins kid destroyed the backboard, and Darryl Dawkins needs a name for what he's done. He gives it one. The chocolate thunder flying, Robinzine crying, teeth shaking, glass breaking, rump roasting, bun toasting, wham bam, glass breaker I am jam. 3 weeks later, on December 5, 1979, it happened again. Philadelphia's Spectrum, a fast break against the San Antonio Spurs. Doug Collins feeds Dawkins, who rises and throws down a two-handed hammer that doesn't just shatter the backboard, but brings the entire rim crashing down with him. This time, the home crowd witnessed the destruction firsthand. Glass flew everywhere. The stanchion swayed dangerously. Dawkins hung from what remained of the rim for a moment before dropping to the floor, seemingly as surprised as everyone else at the devastation he had caused. Dawkins had a name for this one too. The get out of the weighing, backboard swaying, game delaying, if you ain't grooving you best, get moving dunk. Commissioner Larry O'Brien was not amused. He summoned Dawkins to New York and issued a warning. The next time you break a backboard, you will be fined $5,000 and suspended. Dawkins took the threat seriously. But he also noticed something interesting in the weeks that followed. The NBA began running promotional commercials. "The NBA is exciting," the ads proclaimed. Then they showed footage of Dawkins destroying that backboard. As Dawkins later observed with characteristic bluntness, "What the heck, they are threatening to fine me. But they are using my destruction to sell the league." The impact of those 2 dunks extended far beyond fines and commercials. The NBA realized it had a fundamental equipment problem. The fiberglass backboards of the era simply could not withstand the power that players like Dawkins brought to the rim. Something had to change. By the 1981 to 1982 season, the league mandated the adoption of breakaway rims across the entire NBA. The technology had actually been invented years earlier by Arthur Erath of Illinois, who fashioned his original prototype from a John Deere cultivator spring. But it took Dawkins' explosive dunks to force widespread implementation. Think about what that means. Every dunk you have ever seen in modern basketball, every poster, every highlight, every gravity-defying slam that defines today's game, all of it is safer, all of it is possible because of what Darryl Dawkins did to those backboards in 1979. Shaquille O'Neal, who would later shatter backboards himself during his dominant career, understood exactly where his power came from. Darryl Dawkins is the father of power dunking. I'm just one of his sons. The footage became iconic. For years afterward, those two backboard explosions appeared in NBA commercials, highlight reels, and documentaries about the evolution of the game. Dawkins had become more than a player. He had become a moment, the kind of moment that transcends sports and enters popular culture. Kids across America started fantasizing about dunking hard enough to break the glass. Playground arguments erupted over who could dunk like chocolate thunder. The image of Dawkins hanging from a destroyed rim became shorthand for pure, unrestrained athletic power. And Dawkins loved every second of it. While other players might have been embarrassed by the fines and the warnings, Dawkins understood what he had created. He had given basketball something it desperately needed in 1979. Spectacle, drama, a reason to tune in and see what might happen next. The dunks made Dawkins famous, but it was his personality that made him immortal. Darryl Dawkins claimed to be from planet Lovetron. Not metaphorically, not as a joke. He maintained this fictional origin with complete commitment, describing a world where he spent his off-seasons practicing interplanetary funkmanship with his girlfriend Juicy Lucy in a place called Chocolate Paradise. When he was drafted in 1975, Dawkins had a problem. Every other player had a college to announce: Kentucky, UCLA, North Carolina. But Dawkins had skipped all that, so he convinced Philadelphia's public address announcer to introduce him differently. From the planet Lovetron, Darryl Dawkins. The mythology served a deeper purpose than mere entertainment. Dawkins later explained that Lovetron was a planet he had imagined even in high school. It was a drug-free place where you could escape the pressures of the world. Just you and your girl, chilling somewhere peaceful. For a young man who had been stereotyped since the age of 14 as a baby Huey, a man-child, the next Wilt, a coach killer, a cut-up, and a bust, planet Lovetron offered refuge. When critics attacked, Dawkins could retreat to a world where they simply weren't permitted. It was armor disguised as absurdity, a defense mechanism wrapped in comedy. And it worked. The media loved it. Reporters who expected standard athlete cliches instead got tales of interplanetary travel and chocolate paradises. Dawkins gave them something to write about beyond box scores and injury reports. He understood, perhaps instinctively, that entertainment extended beyond the court. His famous nickname came from an unexpected source. Stevie Wonder, the legendary musician, frequently attended 76ers games. Because Wonder couldn't see the action, a companion would describe what was happening on the court. The big chocolate guy just put down a thunder dunk. The chocolate guy with another monster dunk. Wonder synthesized these descriptions into something perfect. Chocolate Thunder. Dawkins marveled, "A guy who never saw me gave me the name Chocolate Thunder. I think I can wear that well." Beyond the alien origins and the thunderous nickname, Dawkins collected aliases like other people collected stamps. Sir Slam, Dr. Dunk, Dr. Dunkenstein, Zandokan the Mad Dunker, Master of Disaster, Double D. He wore gold chains spelling out his nicknames until the NBA banned them. He drove a Corvette, painted so many colors it looked like a rainbow exploded across the hood. He dressed in fire engine red and banana yellow suits. He greeted reporters with a standard opening line: "This is the Dork, and I'm ready to talk." His dunk names became legendary works of creative expression. The Rim Wrecker, the In-Your-Face Disgrace, the Yo Mama, the Spine Chiller Supreme, the Gorilla, the Sexophonic Turbo Delight. The 76ers actually kept a separate column on their stat sheet just to track his latest creations. Dennis Rodman would later become famous for his outrageous self-expression. But Dawkins beat him to it by 2 decades, once writing that he was as bad as he wanted to be, long before Rodman adopted similar phrasing. In 1999, Saturday Night Live named Dawkins the man of the millennium, beating out William Shakespeare and Albert Einstein, neither of whom, they noted, could dunk. It was a joke, but it captured something true about what Dawkins represented. He proved that physical dominance and imaginative creativity could coexist, that an NBA player could claim alien origins, name his dunks like poetry, and paint his car psychedelic colors while still commanding respect as a competitor. There was room for all of that in one smiling package. August 27, 1982, a date that would prove meaningful in Dawkins' life for multiple reasons. On that day, the Philadelphia 76ers traded Darryl Dawkins to the New Jersey Nets for a first-round draft pick. The reason was simple. Philadelphia needed salary cap space to acquire Moses Malone. Team president Howard Katz delivered a harsh assessment. After 7 years, he said you have to stop saying he has potential and start saying he just has not done it. The following season, with Malone in the middle, the 76ers swept through the playoffs and won the 1983 NBA championship. The title that had eluded Dawkins for so many years went to his former teammates just months after his departure. Imagine watching that. Imagine seeing the team you gave 7 years to finally reach the mountaintop, and knowing you were sent away just before they got there. It had to hurt. It had to make Dawkins question what might have been if he had stayed, if he had been the one catching lobs from Andrew Toney and Maurice Cheeks instead of Moses Malone. But Dawkins did not dwell on what might have been. In New Jersey, he actually enjoyed his best individual seasons as a professional. The 1983 to 1984 campaign saw Dawkins average a career-high 16.8 points per game. He also set an NBA record that still stands today: 386 personal fouls in a single season. Nobody has ever committed more. That season also produced his finest playoff moment. The 6th-seeded Nets faced the defending champions 76ers in the first round. Everyone expected Philadelphia to roll. Instead, New Jersey pulled off the upset, winning the series and delivering the franchise's first ever playoff series victory in NBA history. Sports Illustrated would later rank it the 7th greatest playoff upset in league history. In the second round against Milwaukee, Dawkins delivered his career playoff high: 32 points in Game 1. He was playing with a fire and determination that suggested the best might still be ahead. But the body that had made Dawkins so dominant was beginning to break down. Back injuries increasingly limited his availability. Brief stints with the Utah Jazz and Detroit Pistons followed, but the player who had once seemed invincible was fading. During his time in Utah, tragedy struck in the most personal way possible. On November 1, 1987, Dawkins' estranged wife, Kelly Barnes, took her own life. Whatever struggles Dawkins faced on the court paled compared to that devastating loss. The Detroit Pistons won the 1989 NBA championship, sweeping the Los Angeles Lakers in the finals. Dawkins was on that roster, earning him the only championship ring of his career. But he did not play in the postseason. It was a ring earned on the periphery, not in the arena. At 32 years old, Darryl Dawkins' NBA career was over. Most athletes struggle when the cheering stops. Dawkins reinvented himself. He spent 5 seasons playing professional basketball in Italy from 1989 to 1994. Teams in Turin, Milan, and Forlì paid him to do what he had always done: dunk, entertain, dominate. His coach in Italy, Mike D'Antoni, who would later become one of the most influential coaches in NBA history, called Dawkins the best center in Europe and noted that he remained the fastest player on the team, despite being slower and heavier than his NBA prime. Dawkins earned 2 Italian League All-Star selections. Auxilium Torino retired his jersey. Thousands of miles from Philadelphia, he had found a new basketball home. When his playing days finally ended, Dawkins turned to coaching. He led the Pennsylvania Valley Dogs of the United States Basketball League to championships in 2001 and 2004, earning Coach of the Year honors in 1999. From 2009 to 2011, he served as head coach at Lehigh Carbon Community College, passing on his knowledge to the next generation. The transition from player to coach was not always easy. Dawkins had to learn patience, had to understand that not every player possessed his physical gifts, had to find ways to teach the mental aspects of the game that had sometimes eluded him during his own career. But he embraced the challenge with the same enthusiasm he had brought to everything else. His players loved him. How could they not? This was Chocolate Thunder, the man from planet Lovetron, sharing stories from his days with Dr.J and telling tales of shattered backboards. Every practice was part basketball instruction, part history lesson, part comedy show. But perhaps his greatest post-playing impact came at basketball camps. Dawkins worked as many as 85 camps per summer, traveling across the country to teach the game he loved. At every camp, he did the same thing. He would pick up the children one by one and hold them up to the rim so they could experience what it felt like to dunk. Teammate Lloyd Free believed that all those years of lifting kids actually kept Dawkins in remarkable physical shape. From picking up 100 kids, one by one, it was classic Dawkins, taking something that had defined his career and using it to bring joy to others. The man who had shattered backboards was now lifting children to touch them. ID RS
0B1DAFE35DA4E648069834BB15676C8 1A997C858A719B2. Summary: band reasoning. A little boy who never stopped playing, never stopped creating, never stopped finding joy in the game. That little boy came from Orlando, Florida. He claimed to be from planet Lovetron. He called himself Chocolate Thunder and Sir Slam and De Duncanstein and Master of Disaster. He shattered backboards and expectations and stereotypes about what a basketball player could be. And when he left us on August 27, 2015, he left behind a sport that was forever changed by his presence. Changed not just in the record books or the equipment specifications, but in the very idea of what a basketball player could be. Darryl Dawkins, the original, the one and only. Rest in peace, Chocolate Thunder. The universe is a little less colorful without you. Drop a comment below telling us your favorite Darryl Dawkins memory, or which legendary player you'd like us to cover next. And remember, the next time you see a player throw down a thunderous dunk without shattering the backboard, you have Darryl Dawkins to thank. Like and subscribe for more hard-hitting basketball documentaries. Until next time.